Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I don't normally do monologues, as you've probably seen from my content. It's mainly interviews these days. Initially I was reading a few chapters from my first book, but the reason for doing this today is I wanted to thank everybody that supported me. Last night I reached 5,000 sales, 5,000 copies. My target when I wrote it was actually in the back of my mind 1,000. I thought if I could sell 100, that would be amazing. But to have reached 5,000 is staggering. And to find out just a couple of weeks ago that it's now available on Waterstones was something I never imagined. My journey really with Tartaria started during lockdown when I was introduced to someone called Max Egan. And before then, I'd assumed that the empire we're talking about was Mongolia. Anyway, this is just a quick monologue to thank everybody that's got behind me. And what I thought I would do is actually just give you a little bit of information from some of the chapters in it. So chapter 1 is called Has History Been Rewritten? Well, the answer to that is yes. Not only have they wiped out an entire civilization from the face of the earth, but they have actually falsified our timeline. I studied Anatoly Fomenko, who was a Russian scientist, and he believed that 800 years had been added, and that happened in or around 1776, which would have actually been 976 AD. And this aligns with people's belief that the Tartarian period that I'm talking about was actually the millennial reign of Christ, and that he reigned for 1,000 years. Well, that ties in because, oddly as it may seem, Jesus was allegedly born in 3 BC. So we're not a million miles away in 976 for him actually reigning for 1,000 years. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But and what happened to him, of course, is up for debate. Where did he go? Was he killed? Has he disappeared? Has he gone to another realm? We don't know. But history has certainly been falsified. And of course, as we know, a lot of people refer to history as his story. And it's almost certainly written by the victors. So chapter 1's a deep dive into that, and it looks at the real cause behind a lot of the civil wars, the Napoleonic Wars as well, and World War One. Which was orchestrated by a group of people called the Society of the Elect, headed up by Cecil Rhodes. Their fear was that Germany was going to become a superpower, and my belief, and that of many others that research Tartaria, is that Germany was still running using Tartarian technology. Chapter 2 is titled The Elite, the Parasitic Race, and I refer to them as parasites because they live from our hard work. They seem to absorb our low vibration and our energy. They try and keep us down and subdued, and have done everything they can to suppress us and stop us reaching our full potential, constantly making us live in fear and threat. We are ultimately debt slaves. Chapter 3 is about the Tartarian Empire and where it stems from. Perhaps the most famous ruler throughout the Tartarian Empire was Genghis Khan, and he is not the warmonger that you've led to be to believe. Almost everything has been inverted. Chapter 4 is about the architecture. Cathedrals, which are actually cathode rails, they were centres of energy. Churches, which were not places you went to worship. Even Jesus said that I'm not religious, by the way, but I do respect anybody that is. But the further I've dug into Tartaria, the more connections I can see to Jesus. But churches were actually, again, centres of healing, and the bells emitted a particular frequency, which did that, and also could actually control the weather to an extent. And star forts are included. Now, they're a fantastic anomaly. Certainly worth looking on Google. Just type in star fort, and what you'll see defies all logic. They're supposed to be defensive fortresses, but they align to constellations and resonate at the same frequency as the Earth. Chapter 5 is Lost Tartarian Technology. This mainly relates to harnessing energy from the ether, which is something that it's alleged the Atlanteans did, and that was the purpose of the pyramids. I think now we're starting to realise that these structures are a lot bigger than we've been led to believe, and have been almost fully submerged. They go down a lot farther into the ground than we're currently being told. Chapter 6 is Fire, Flood and the Comet of 1811. There's a lot of references within the Tartarian community to mud floods, and these are easily this is easily recognised when you look at old buildings. You can be walking along High Street and you'll see windows appearing out of the out of the pavement, and you'll be led to believe that they're actually windows for basements to allow light in, but actually they're often several stories down into the ground. And this was because there were floods, fires and mud floods across the world all at the same time, and that raised the level of the earth. And that's another reason why when archaeologists are out excavating, that they are having to excavate. That's why they're having to dig. People don't often question the fact that if you're looking for Roman remains, why do you have to dig several feet into the ground to do so? Chapter 8 is Whitewashing, Repurposing and World's Fairs. Now, whitewashing refers to not just actually taking buildings and changing the purpose of them, and a lot of the world's fairs and expositions around the world were painted white, and that was to disguise the fact that there were significant symbols actually carved and mounted within these structures, and a lot of buildings were repurposed for governmental use. Nearly all of the world's fairs had fires or were demolished within a very short period of time. Often they were built in under a year, and these are small cities that look like almost similar to the Vatican, built in a very short period of time. Every now and again the leading architect behind them would win the contract in a competition and have no actual background in building anything like this before. So you can normally pick apart the world's fairs and expositions by taking a closer look into the architect. Chapter 9 is called Vanilla Skies, and that's a reference to photoshopping. That's been going on a long time. Even in Victorian times they were manipulating photographs. And they've done that to block out what's in the background behind some of these early pictures in towns and cities. They don't want you seeing some of the buildings and also the size of the trees and airships everywhere. Chapter 10 is Asylums, and that talks about the introduction of the Lunacy Act and why all of a sudden, almost overnight, asylums popped up everywhere across the world, and people were being committed, mainly women, were being committed for numerous reasons, such as reading too much or being overly religious. But the key reason for committing women in particular was if they lost their husband in battle. Now, there were a lot of civil wars going on. The death rate was up in the millions across the world. So if you can imagine, you've got an awful lot of widows out there, and if you can take them and lock them up, then the children become custody of the state, property of the state, and then they were redistributed to form a new workforce and infrastructure across the world. They were given new names. They were forced to speak English regardless of their native tongue, and their heritage completely destroyed. Chapter 11 is about prisons, and these were often where men were sent that wouldn't comply. Those that wouldn't comply to the New World Order, which happened in 1776. They fought back against the new regime. They didn't want things to change. They lived in harmony and balance, and there wasn't money, there wasn't greed. They prospered, and when they rebelled, they were also incarcerated. Chapter 12 is titled Orphans and the Orphan Trains, and this is the mass movement of children across the world, children from Tartaria, which was the perhaps most prevalent in Russia and Eastern Europe and Asia, and the children were taken from there and transported across the world. And in America in particular, children from New York were taken and distributed to the Midwest and sent to work on farms, put on display outside Masonic lodges where they performed in the hope that they were going to find a new family and have a better life, but they weren't adopted. They were treated as slave labour and often sold between farms, and a lot were sent to mine, which is where the name miners comes from. If you look at early images of mining, then it's always children. Again, you'll see that throughout the Industrial Revolution as well. Chapter 13 is repopulation and the Cabbage Patch Babies. Now this is something that inspired me to write a second book. It was considered to be the most popular and interesting of all of the chapters, and the connections and various rabbit holes that link off the warren that is Tartaria. Now this is a mass human cloning exercise. It was actually promoted in plain sight. A series of postcards came out called Cabbage Patch postcards that depicted babies being grown in cabbage patches, and then 2 films were made by a French director called Alice Guy, and that actually demonstrated a couple coming to purchase a baby from a cabbage patch. And if you can find that footage online, it's called The Cabbage Fairy, and the second one is called The Midwife to the Upper Classes. Just check out how they're handling the babies. Chapter 13, Chapter 14 is the Industrial Revolution. I believe that that's reversing Tartarian technology, literally taking things that were prevalent in the Tartarian period, getting them up and running again, sometimes not quite as they were intended. There were an awful lot of deaths and accidents, and incidentally, if during the Industrial Revolution you were killed in one of these factories or workshops, they actually delivered the dead body to the doorstep of their home and left it there. Chapter 15, doing it again. Chapter 15 is about Nikola Tesla, a man who, if he existed, and I'm still trying to find somebody out there that's got video footage of him, which is odd because he was at the forefront of technology, a pioneer of technology, yet there is no video footage of him anywhere in the world. Yet there is of Edison and there is of Einstein, who allegedly he worked with, but absolutely nothing exists. Even his museum can't help me with that, and I'm still looking for a living descendant from Tesla to see if they can help me with this. But if he did exist, he was reverse engineering Tartarian technology. His ambition really was to connect the world with wireless energy that's harnessed from the ether, again going back to Atlantean technology. And it concludes with this reset, what we're currently going through now with Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, the 15-minute cities, the installation of 5G, the pandemic, and the hike in the cost of in the cost of living. So that's in a nutshell Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. I now reached, as I said, I've now reached 5,000 copies. It's available in hardback and it's available in paperback too. But a lot of people, because there are a lot of images in it, asked me if there was a colour edition available, and at the time there wasn't. So I had one made, and I gave it a different cover. So that is the hardback full colour version. It's the special edition, and inside a lot of the images are brought to life, I suppose, by the fact that they are printed in colour. These are some of the star forts that I was referring to earlier on. As you can see, these are not defensive fortresses. This one actually looks like a cartoon. Looks like a drawing, doesn't it? But that actually is a real photograph. That's Fort McHenry. They're all over the world. I think there are 319 currently. Some of the postcards as well are featured in here. Again, I think they're brought to life a little bit more in colour. These are the postcards that were distributed in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Started off in Germany. They were very popular there. Then went into France, Europe, and then over to England, and then across to America. So following the success of my first book and the demand really for more information on the Cabbage Patch element, I wrote my second. Now actually I was researching human cloning since 2012 when I stumbled across someone called Donald Marshall, who alleges that he was cloned as a child, and that in dumb bases, these military bases around the world, that several layers underground is where the cloning takes place. So it's a deep dive into that. It looks at the Anunnaki and the story that they, from the Emerald Tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that they were cloning humans to become a slave race, and also looks at the story of Adam and Eve. And some people say Adam and Lilith, but I think for ease, if I refer to the couple as Adam and Eve being created from the rib of Adam, if you consider how old that story is and how old the Bible is, then whether or not it's a metaphor is kind of irrelevant, because in essence, to take a rib and clone from it, even if it is metaphorically being written or spoken, that is exactly how you would clone in primitive times. Obviously now it's a little bit easier to extract DNA, but the story of cloning goes back a very long time. But Rise of the Clones is a much deeper dive into exactly how that happens. The chapters in here start off with the origins of human cloning, going back, as I said, to the Anunnaki. Then a little bit about Tartaria, for those that haven't read my first book, and explains why there was a need to repopulate. Chapter 3 is about the Cabbage Patch babies themselves and the cloning program that was used to repopulate. Chapter 4, the incubator babies. Now this is Dr. Martin Clooney, who went on display across the world with his incubators, which started out in Paris. He wasn't actually a doctor, and these babies were grown artificially and very quickly. Some of the advertising for them actually stated that they could grow a fully formed baby in a matter of days. Chapter 5 looks at baby farms, in particular a lady called Amelia Dyer, who is still today considered to be the most notorious serial killer that ever existed. She was taking babies in from single women and then distributing them without their knowledge, selling them, shipping them abroad, and sometimes the mother would come back to collect the children, and they'd gone. She also killed dozens. Chapter 6 is about the Cabbage Patch Kids. Now this is the doll itself, and the story behind this is quite shocking. I dug deep on this. I found out quite a bit about how it actually began and where he stole, Xavier Roberts that is, stole the idea from. And it was a mass kind of brainwashing exercise. And a lot of people aren't aware that if you bought one of these dolls and it was damaged and you sent it back to the manufacturer and they couldn't repair it, it was returned to the child with a death certificate. And Xavier Roberts was adamant that you weren't allowed to buy one of these. Although money changed hands, you were actually adopting it. And again, it was getting into that sort of psychology of babies being born or produced like cabbages in patches, in an almost farming capacity, and then being sold. Chapter 7 explores Dolly the sheep and animals that have been cloned, and that's a lot more sinister, and you'll be very surprised to read where that actually has been taking place, and which countries have very laxed laws on it. Chapter 8 is all about inbreeding, and that includes people like Cleopatra and Tutankhamun, but also members of royalty as well, and the dangers with inbreeding, and also why it's so important to them, and that's to do with certain blood groups. And it's not, as we often refer, keeping that bloodline, but it's actually the blood group itself. It's very specific, and that relates to something called Rh null, not necessarily Rh negative, which a lot of people say is Atlantean, which would also be by definition Tartarian, but Rh null or golden blood, that's what they're looking for. Chapter 9 is titled Cloning in the Movies. There's a lot of references to cloning in the movies, and again I think that's subliminally telling us that it goes on, and in such a way that we dismiss it as pure fiction, but following sort of karmic law and their fear of karmic retribution, and by they I mean the parasites, better known to me and you as the Jesuits, and originally the Phoenicians, the people who finished off the Tartarian Empire and responsible for all of the laws that we have today and banking. They fear retribution, which can be a backlash from not telling us what they're doing. So by doing it in a way in which we dismiss it as fiction or fantasy, they've covered their asses. Chapter 10 is about celebrity cloning and cloning centres. Now this is information that was given to me by Donald Marshall, who I don't believe is still out there. I've been told he was killed shortly after I first stumbled across him in 2012, but there is somebody on social media claiming to be him. I've spoken to him, and I'm not buying it. But if he's still getting the message out there on Donald's behalf, then great. Chapter 11 is about Disney and their links to cloning, and also what's been happening there with children going missing, and Walt Disney's links to MK Ultra. A lot of people won't know that he was actually an agent for the FBI. Chapter 13 is about Ancestry.com and the genealogy websites, and exactly what goes on when you send your DNA off, and also about the information that you receive when you try and research your own family tree. A lot of it's false, and if it is false, that is because there is a possibility that your ancestors were cloned after the fall of Tartaria and the reset in 1776, and there is no history prior to that. And you'll often find that that's the case if you look around churchyards. It's very difficult to find many gravestones that predate that. Now the argument would be that a lot of them were wooden, and that they buried people on top. But you can only do that a number of times if the first one's 6 feet down before you hit the surface. But there is another reason that graveyards normally surround churches, and that's to hide the actual true size of the building itself. Chapter 14 is about the homunculus. Now in Jewish mythology, this is also called the golem, and this is man's desire, people like John Dee, to create a human being without reproduction taking place in the traditional way. And scientists throughout the years have been trying to do this, and it explores how they did it, but more importantly why they were doing it. And there just seems to be this constant desire for a slave race to exist. And chapter 15 is a series of stories that have been sent to me by people that reached out when I appealed several months ago, looking for anybody that had discovered a skeleton in their closet when they were researching their own ancestry, and also stories from people whose ancestors, their parents or grandparents, were on the orphan trains. So in a nutshell, that's it. That's the latest book, Rise of the Clones. There is an audiobook available for my first book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. So what I'm going to do is anybody that's watching this that hasn't read my first book, if you want to purchase a copy, then get in touch. I'll put my email below, and what I'll do is anybody that purchases a copy directly from me, I will send you a free special edition audiobook with each copy that's sold. There is a new audiobook coming out for Rise of the Clones. Again, if you buy a copy of this, then I will also, when it's available, send you a free audiobook for that as well. And I just want to thank everybody that supported me and everybody that follows this channel and that keeps in touch. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for helping me get this information out there. More people are waking up all the time, and I think that the more we can inform others that our past is a lie, then we will take control of our future. Because if they can hide an entire civilization and deny us of knowing who we really are, where we came from and what we're capable of, and how we've been suppressed and dumbed down and poisoned, then perhaps that will stop people from obeying and participating in the games that they're playing now. As I look above me in Devon, out the window here, they've been chemtrailing all day. The only way we're going to stop that is if we can get people to wake up and see what's going on, and I hope that in a very small way that my work is helping people do that. Anyway, the books are available on Amazon if you don't want a signed copy. I'll put links below. And a huge thank you. And what I'm going to do is anybody who emails me, I'm going to put all your names in a hat, and regardless of whether you buy a copy or not, I'm going to draw a winner, and send a free copy of both books and my audiobook too. And I'll be doing that within the next week or so. So I'll just put a quick monologue up next week to announce the winner. But in the event that you purchase a copy between now and then, and you happen to win, then I'll either send you a new copy or I'll refund you in full. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, and thank you once again to everybody that's enabled me to get this information out there and supported this channel and my work. Goodbye for now.